Hello, everyone. Hello, Voyagers. Thank you all for joining. I hope you can hear and see me well. Great. We'll start in just a few seconds. So, hello, Voyagers, and thank you all for taking the time out on a Friday, depending on where you are. Maybe it's already early Saturday morning. I know it is for some of you Voyagers who are signing in from Europe, and thank you all who are new subscribe or new to my channel. And normally, my hair is not so unkempt. It is time for a haircut. I've just been a little lazy. And normally I don't start with myself, but today I'm going to try something a little bit different. So, welcome. Thank you all. Thank you. And Voyagers, those of you who are returning, welcome back. It is 9 a.m. here in Singapore, and we are about to begin our tour of this wonderful and beautiful and amazing Chinese temple called the Thian Hock Keng Temple. It is 27 degrees Celsius in Singapore early in the morning. Remember, well, 9 a.m. early for some. That is 81 degrees Fahrenheit in case you're thinking in Fahrenheit terms. But the humidity, it's a whopping 86%. It's supposed to be storming and raining today. And luckily, fingers crossed, we have clear weather right now, as you can see behind me. Now, just a little bit of background before we go into this temple, which I've already used too many adjectives to describe. But before I do that, remember, Voyagers, this is an interactive journey. Please feel free to interact with other Voyagers, with me, questions, comments, information. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is a interactive session, but please, let's just be respectful of each other. All right, so now Singapore, which is a small island here in Southeast Asia, is approximately 31% Buddhist, and it is about 9% Taoist. So if you combine the two, we are approximately 40% Buddhist here. And I guess I did forget to do one thing, which is introduce myself, my name. So my name is Imran. I am a guide here in Singapore. I am a tour guide indeed in Singapore, but I have in my previous life been in the corporate world. So this is my reinvention of myself over the last, say, 13 to 15 years. All right. So I was saying 40% of Singapore's population is Buddhist and Taoist combined. The temple that we're going to see, the Thian Hock Keng Temple, the Temple of Heavenly Happiness, is a hybrid temple. Although it's formally a Taoist temple, we will see that some of the deities inside belong to some of the other faith structures. Now, I'm going to do something, I'm going to try to do something a little bit different with you today. And that is that I would like you to think about a Chinese migrant's experience as he comes to Singapore. So put yourself in the shoes of this imaginary character that I'm creating for you. Let's call him Mr. Tan. And he is coming to Singapore in the late 19th century or early 1900s. Mr. Tan is coming from southern China, southeast China. He's most likely from the clan or dialect group, which we call Hokkien, which is the main or the largest dialect group here in Singapore. And he's leaving China because things are really bad over there. There are no jobs, there's famine, the government is ineffective, can't help him. There are wars going on, all sorts of things. It is a harrowing journey for this migrant. And I'm going to use some photographs which I have dug up from the internet. And I have to give the credit here to the National Archives of Singapore, as well as the National Heritage Board in Singapore, as well as the National Library Board. And In addition, I have taken some photographs that are publicly available on Pinterest. So now look at this first photograph. You can see the photos, incidentally, range from the late 1800s or early 1900s all the way up to the 1980s, but they're meant to give you reflection of what it would have been like for a migrant, a Chinese migrant, to arrive here, and the central role that this temple played in their arrival if they were coming from Southeast China. So you can see from this picture that I put up that they were on a very harrowing journey, and it was a very, very difficult time for Mr. Tan. He was basically afraid of even not reaching Nanyang. Nanyang, you can think of as kind of the promised land for Southern Chinese. It means the South Seas. However, the South Seas conjured up an image of fertile land, of jobs, of security, and so on. So many Chinese males, most likely you were a male if you were coming to Singapore to seek a better life. It was very unlikely, although there were some, very unlikely that you were female. So Mr. Tan has taken this voyage. He's probably begged, borrowed, maybe even stole money to get on this boat to reach Singapore. And once he reaches Singapore, he is basically going to land just about where I am sitting, because the original shoreline was along this street called the Lok Ayer Street. The Lok Ayer in Malay, which is the lingua franca of the region at the time, means water bay. So from this painting, which indeed is at the back of the Thian Hock Keng Temple, this painting, you can see how close the shoreline was to the temple. So Mr. Tan arrives, he's dehydrated, he's probably tired, he's got maybe even unwell, and suddenly he sees the temple, which is literally just across from where his boat is landing, his ship is landing. He's come off a 3-week journey. He sees this temple. This temple gives him a certain sense of security. Why? Well, and this is the temple as it looked like in 1900s. This temple is a Southern Chinese style temple. So it has curved roofs. You can see we will see it from the outside as well. It has dragons. It has a little pearl on the top. All these things are very familiar to Mr. Tan, because Mr. Tan is from Southern China, and he breathes a sigh of relief like, okay, I've got off this boat. I see all these people of ethnicities and races that I've never seen before. I'm hearing languages that I've never heard before. And I see people in strange clothes and dress. But in front of me, I see something familiar. I see this temple. It reminds me of home. It's got Chinese deities. Let me walk inside and let me give thanks. Now, it is not a surprise that the main deity inside this temple is called Ma Chu, and she is the goddess of the seas. The goddess of the seas, and that's because imagine you're coming off this 3-week journey and it is very, very dangerous. You've reached safely. Who do you attribute this to? You attribute it to the goddess of the seas for keeping you safe. More about her later. Now, you've reached Nanyang because you don't even know it's Singapore until maybe a little bit later. So what do? You try and find people from your own clan, your own dialect group, your own area, and you try and find a way to live, to make a living, because your whole purpose is, as an economic migrant, send money back to your family. But when you land, you will, here's another shot of the temple. You can see there are some women praying at the temple, and also some priests with worshippers. And that photograph is from the 1890s, the one on the right. So you can see that the temple was already a big, big hub for migrants from coming in from southern China. So you come here, you're looking for this job, but things are really not easy for you, and you have a few choices. And what are some of the things that you see? Well, you see that their life is tough. There is opium available everywhere, which was a scourge in China at the time as well. There is gambling. And what are your options? Well, basically, Mr. Tan is probably illiterate. He probably doesn't have any skills. That's why he's leaving China to come to this new world. So he can be a laborer. He can maybe pull a rickshaw. He can try and hawk food if he or hawk other things if he is able to do that. And he, of course, can also find a job in a domestic as a domestic staff in a wealthy household. So there are lots of temptations for Mr. Tan because it's gambling, opium, but for those type of things, of course, he needs money. One of the things that is always tempting for Mr. Tan, he's a new migrant, he doesn't know anyone here, he wants to send money back, is to join a secret society. Secret societies were flourishing in Singapore at the time, and basically these secret societies were involved in all sorts of vices and illegal trade. So I think the older version of the triad. It was a much easier way to go as far as raising money is concerned. But let's assume that Mr. Tan doesn't get tempted by these ills, and he somehow finds a way to move forward. And it's the temple that gives him a lot of hope, a lot of inspiration that he can do it because he keeps going back and praying to all the deities that are inside. But still, life in Singapore is very, very difficult. I have some more shots that show you what life was like in the past. And in fact, some of these shots are quite recent, but it also speaks to the transformation that we have had here in Singapore in literally the last 30, 40 years. So the temple is the focus for Mr. Tan and the focus for many Chinese, and it brings hope and inspiration to all of these individuals. And ultimately, and we will see this inside, it is also the place where many wealthier Chinese will end up resting. I've taken this photo from the Thian Hock Keng website. You can see that you have to pay to put up a tablet, which is like a mini tombstone. We'll see the location of this inside the temple as well. And this allows you to stay there for 30 years. It's part of the concept of filial piety, something that was championed by Confucius, who is one of the deities that we will see inside. Now, with that, I think you're probably had enough of me, so I am just going to post the credits photo, and then let's begin our walk to the temple. You might even see the temple. It's a little behind me right there. So let's begin our walk to the temple. All right, so let's go. Let me switch around here. And all right, so we've got some tour buses that are arriving here. But before we go in, I do want to give you some shots of the temple from the outside because it is absolutely beautiful. Now you might see some poles and things in the way because yesterday there was a formal event over here across the road from the temple. So here we have the Thian Hock Keng Temple. Remember where I'm standing? This was the shoreline. So I would be standing in water now. You can see the dragons up there. The dragons are a very auspicious symbol. They represent the authority of the heavens coming down to the emperor. Chinese dragons basically can fly, so they are heavenly creatures. And in between the two main dragons, can some of you see the pearl over there? That is also a southern Chinese feature, and that feature represents the striving for perfection because it's a perfect circle, and it's the human desire to strive for perfection. You can also see from here the fact that the curved roof, very southern Chinese, and also I will try and zoom in here. If you can see right above the tentage, there are those green round, I'll call them poles. Those are meant to mimic bamboo poles because, of course, the bamboo also very, very important in Chinese culture. Strong yet flexible, can carry a lot of weight and so on. So I hope you can see these things. Now, I know, I'm sorry, there was a question earlier about women worshippers, and I apologize, I didn't get to that earlier. I was too busy trying to recite my story. So, there are many worshippers. Of course, today Singapore is, of course, trying to achieve as much gender equality as possible. At the time, it was a very different situation because to travel to Singapore in the 1800s, 1900s was not so easy for women unless you were from the wealthy colonial elite. Yes, I will zoom in on the dragons as well, but now Mr. Tan, this is where he gets off the boat and he does see these dragons and he also sees this temple, and this is what gives him a certain sense of, how's that? Certain sense of security, right? Because he sees all this and he thinks, okay, let's just ignore all these weird noises, the languages that I'm hearing, and let's focus on the fact that I know this. I know this temple, I know these deities, and let me go in and give my thanks to the goddess of the seas, who he's probably heard about during his voyage uh, as being the main deity inside here. So we walk from the shoreline towards the temple. Now, this is where I want you guys to really focus on the splendor that Mr. Tan would have seen. And he would have said, okay, really, I'm going to make some money here because look at how beautiful this temple is. And that's the plaque which names the temple. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a zoom around to show you some of the workmanship that we have. And all this craftsmanship was done essentially by South Chinese craftsmen who were brought in for this temple. And we'll zoom in on the granite carvings a little bit later. So Mr. Tan is taking all of this in, and he is saying, he is getting hopeful. He's saying, surely there's got to be money for me over here because this temple reflects the sort of money that the Hokkien, the Chinese community has, that they have put into creating this temple. This temple started life as a small altar in the 1820s. The structure that we are seeing was built and completed in 1842. So it's almost 200 years old. And I want to just give you one more pan where I pan down from the and show you the main entrance. So I am standing in front of the main entrance, and we see an urn. So Mr. Tan sees the urn, and you can see all the red lanterns. Now, Ma Chu is behind the urn in that inner area. I will not be able to take you too close because photography is not allowed there, but we will have a look at her. Now, the temple, it is a sacred place, of course, so it has to be guarded. And in at the main entrance, we have a pair of guardian lions. So one, and if you take a look at this lion underneath one of the paws, you might see, let me zoom in so that you can get a closer look. Can you see there's a little cub there, a lion cub? So this is the female in the pair represented by the lion cub. And then on my right, we have this one, the male, and he's represented with a sphere that is meant to represent the world. So, Voyagers, any comments, questions so far? We are about to enter the Temple of Heavenly Happiness. Now, I, as a normal mortal, cannot take this main entrance, which is reserved for nobility. So I am going to take the entrance here on the right. Along the way, we'll see some carvings, the window carvings you can see here, and something very interesting that you will find on the four corners of the windows. See an animal. This animal doesn't really have a good reputation these days, but maybe some of you can guess what it is. Any guesses? Yes, Igor, thank you. It's a bat. And that's because a bat, particularly to the southern Chinese, is considered an auspicious animal. The word or the name for bat is fu, which also sounds a bit like prosperity or good fortune. You can see these carvings. I'm glad you're enjoying the photographs, Katie, and ignore the CCTV camera, but let me take you in. We have our own zoom lens here as well. So let me take you into that. And also, let's check out the dragon up there. Now, someone once told me that this dragon has sad eyes. I'm not sure if you agree, but he's certainly a handiwork of some craftsmen. Not easy to come up with these. Yeah, Wayne, I guess you agree. So let's slowly, you can see another bat there on the other window. This one perhaps looks a little bit more like a bat. So let us go into the temple. And here we are. Thank you, Katie. Uh, I really wanted to show everyone this temple because I just really, really love the work here. So take a look at the courtyard here, and you can see there are even some worshippers there. Now, I am not allowed to go beyond that urn, but we'll take some nice views of that. So behind the lady in red is where Ma Chu, the goddess of the seas, her statue is located. And take a different view here. Now, the goddess of the seas, she can predict the weather, so therefore she can warn sailors of storms, of other things that could be dangerous for them. And she can also, she has the power to calm the sea. So, of course, when sailors are in trouble, and she's got two helpers, one who's got extraordinary hearing, another one who's got extraordinary sight. So, when a sailor is in trouble and they scream for help, the one helper who can hear, he tells Ma Chu, there's a sailor in trouble over yonder. When they are in trouble and they can't ask for help, then the helper who can see, he lets her know. Now you saw that this gentleman here, he put some joss sticks or incense sticks in that urn. The thinking behind that is that when you say a prayer and you light a joss stick or you burn something, as the smoke goes up to the heavens, it carries your prayer to your ancestors. And that, of course, is linked to that filial piety which I talked about earlier. And there you can see a nice shot. I'm going to step back without tripping over anything. The entrance, you can see there are more dragons there as well. And the pearl also. So, Voyagers, if you have joined me a little bit late, we are following Mr. Tan's journey to Singapore. He has arrived in Singapore from southern China, and he has walked into a familiar place in an unfamiliar territory. And that familiar place is this temple. Why is it familiar? Well, he's never been to the temple before, but he knows the architecture, he knows the deities, so they give him a sense of security in this new world that he has landed in the late 1800s to try and get a better life. Now, here is our first deity inside. I'm going to do a clockwise walk around the temple. There are several deities around here. This one is a deity who is known to protect cities. So you can see in a new environment, many Chinese, they're coming to build a home. Of course, they want the city to be protected. And so this God protects cities, the city god. Now, what you might find interesting are the two characters on the right and the left, the one with the tongue hanging out and the black character. These were two great generals who helped this god by administering justice, by bringing in prisoners, and they are shown in this pose because they were the best of friends. Because one day when they were walking home, it started to pour, and they got to a bridge. At the bridge, the person, one of these generals said, "Okay, I'm going to," and it was the one whose tongue is sticking out. He said, "I'm going to go and get an umbrella. You wait right here." And he went off to get an umbrella. The rain started to pour, got really, really hard. And the person at the bridge, who was the black general, suddenly found himself drowning. Let me see if I can give you a vertical shot of this. Okay, so I'll take it vertical in 3, 1, 2, 3. Found that they were drowning, and this white general couldn't come back in time. And so the black guard, the other second general, he drowned. This one blamed himself for his friend's drowning, and he hung himself. And that's the tragic story of these two generals. Now, they were known to be merciful and soft, which means that if someone genuinely felt remorseful and was willing to, and I'm going to turn it back horizontal now in 3, 1, 2, 3. If someone was remorseful, they would want to be able to forgive them. All right. So, Voyagers, are we still there? I hope you're not getting bored by all my talking. Let me show you a little bit more. So, in the next room, and we have another outdoor urn. In the next room, we have someone who is known as the sacred governor. And the sacred governor, let me give you a vertical of this in 3, 1, 2, 3. The sacred governor was known to be someone who the emperor had given some land to develop. And the land was not supposed to be so fertile. I'm going to take it back to horizontal in 3, 1, 2, 3. So this sacred governor, this governor, was very, very successful in developing this land and creating a city that was flourishing, that was able to provide jobs, that was able to take care of its people. And so he is known for this good governance. Now let's put that in the context of Mr. Tan. Mr. Tan has arrived. First thing he does is he thanks the goddess of the seas for his safe arrival. Then he sees the deity that is going to protect the city that he is going to make his life in. And the second deity that he sees is the sacred governor. This deity is going to help to grow this city that Mr. Tan is now made home, albeit temporarily for him at the moment. So let's move on to our third location within the temple. And this is somewhat of a somber, sad location. Why? Because this is where I mentioned people put their tablets to signify their dead. So every tablet that you see, they're called tablets. You think of them almost as mini tombstones. They represent someone who has passed away, and because of this concept of filial piety and ancestor worship, people will come here and they will place offerings, they will make prayers to their ancestors so their ancestors do not get lonely. Step back a little and give you a better view of that. Now, some of you might notice that there are a few tablets in the right cabinet, my right cabinet. Let me zoom in on them. If you can see, they are covered in red. Those are the unused tablets, and they are reserved. Hi, Dawn. Hello, Voyagers. No problem. I am here, and I hopefully will be showing you more of this beautiful and amazing temple. So let's move away from the little bit of a sad sight to something more in line with a cheerful day. Now, this is where we have come from. The sun is shining bright, so I'm not sure if you can get the lighting there, but this is where we have come from. This is not the main courtyard. When we are facing the entrance, this is on the left. And we are carrying on. And we have another urn over here. Now, in Singapore, for safety reasons, all urns now must be placed outside in the open air. They cannot be inside. Now, near this urn, we have another main deity at the temple. And although this is a Buddhist temple, a Taoist temple, I apologize for that. This deity is a Buddhist deity, often called Guanyin, or the goddess of mercy. You can see that in Singapore, at least, Chinese temples tend to be a blend of various belief structures. Let's go in a little bit closer, since there aren't any worshippers here. You can see she's got many, many arms, because of course she can then work with many, many problems. Let me give you a vertical here. In 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, so back to horizontal in 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, her formal name is Guan Shi Yin. And Guan Shi Yin, Guan means to watch or to observe. Shi means the world, and Yin sounds. And so that has been interpreted, her name has been interpreted to mean one who hears cries of the world. So she is here to help. She reduces suffering. The two smaller deities that you see on the right and on the left, they help her in reducing suffering. They help to destroy disease. They provide light. As you know, light we are talking about as knowledge and taking away ignorance. So how are we holding up so far? Mr. Tan is enjoying himself because he has lost his problems of his journey, and he is praying hard to all these gods and deities about his future and his family. So thank you for responding. And thank you. I hope you are enjoying it. Now, Mr. Tan is, of course, here because he wants to provide for his family. And one of the key things that he is going to do is he wants his next generation, his kids, to be educated. So here is another urn. So when Mr. Tan reaches this deity, he is praying especially for his children. Why is that? Because this deity, Confucius, is associated with learning, with knowledge. Let me give you a vertical of Confucius here in 3, 1, 2, 3. So Confucius, as I mentioned, associated with learning. It is very common around exam time to see students over here to basically, if they've not been studying over the course of the year, to come here and please ask Confucius to allow them to pass their exams. I'm going to go horizontal again. So I'm just reading the chat, and I am hoping that Dawn, things are looking a bit more cheerful for you as we, or a little bit of cheer through your life as we go through this amazing temple. And yes, hopefully this temple will bring all of us good fortune, good luck. Now you can see there are two students basically next to him. Most of you have probably heard of Confucius and his works. Well, he became an education minister, and he is one of the first people who implemented public education, free education for all, which he championed in China as the education minister. Now, we are talking a long, long time ago because he lived in the BC, maybe around 2,500 years ago. So it was something that while he was a philosopher, he never really wrote anything. It was his students who put together his writings and his teachings later on. And filial piety is something that he is big on. He is also big on lifelong learning, as well as a hierarchical structure based on competence or merit. And so the civil service exams that you see in many countries, that was championed by him first in China. All right, Voyagers, I've been talking a lot. Any comments or questions from any of you? Let me try and give you a shot of the urn as well with the smoke rising. Hopefully with the light being okay. And I'll give you a vertical in 1, 2, 3. I'm glad you're finding it interesting, Bonnie. So I'll go back to horizontal in 3. Great. Thank you, Matthew. And thank you all, Voyagers, for joining me on this tour. We've got one more deity and a few more photo ops before we conclude. And we can see there are some people praying over here as well to this deity. Let's Virginia, yes, absolutely they do. In fact, the Hungry Ghost Festival, which is the 7th month in the lunar calendar, is a big one. And that's when the spirits of many of the dead come out into the world. And what we, the living, have to do is make sure that these spirits are entertained. Otherwise, at the end of the month, they don't go back to the spirit world and they stay on earth to haunt us. That's just one of the festivals. That's the main one. There are many others. And I do want to thank Katie and Ashley who left a tip for me. Tipping is always encouraged. It's a great way to allow us to create and push out more content on this wonderful platform. So this is the final deity that we have in the temple. Temple Sweeping Festival, that's a different one. That's a different one. We have many other festivals that are celebrated by the Chinese. And the interesting thing is, and I know I'm sidetracking here, is that in Singapore, where about 75% of the individuals are Chinese, many of them have embraced Christianity. However, they will still practice these traditional Chinese festivals. So they have modified or adapted their own faith to make sure that they don't come across as being disrespectful to their elders, if that is clear to you. Now, this lost deity, he is what is called a protecting deity. And thank you very much, Matthew and Michael. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to get to go on one of your tours very soon as well. I believe you do some wonderful tours, if I'm not mistaken. So he is a protection deity. And what does that mean? He basically protects the temple. His job is, oh, I'm sorry, Matthew, I must be mixing up the name. But thank you for joining my channel. And hopefully those of you who have not followed me, you can follow me and enjoy the new content that I push out once in a while. So this protection deity, he protects the temple. And he's got two guards with him to help him protect the temple. His job basically is to make sure evil stays out and that bad people stay out. So in a sense, he's the immigration and TSA, the Homeland Security combined all in one, and he's got these two helpers. But thank you, Richard. But I am going to show you a few other individuals who are meant to keep evil out as well. Before that, let me take it vertical for you. For a vertical in 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes, Virginia, you're absolutely right. They do. Some of them are protecting deities, and others help them do their jobs. So I wouldn't like to call them assistants because, of course, we're all collaborators now. But there you go. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, I'll take it back to horizontal in 1, 2, 3. And as I turn around, I will give you a few nice shots, hopefully, of the temple courtyard. Now, you can probably also see that this temple is a low-rise building in a high-rise area because this temple today is located in the central business district. Thank you, Richard. You're right. I should have pointed that out. One is his son. Thank you for that. So here we have the courtyard. And maybe a frame within a frame. Yeah, it is. Singapore is a city of contrasts. For those of you who have been here, I think you will see these sort of things quite commonly, in particularly those areas which were settled during the early colonial period, which is the 1800s onward. So we have a family worshiping. Now, Guanyin, I'm sorry, not Guanyin, Machu, who is located behind, inside where all the darkness is. This is what she looks like. Thank you, Katie. Let me see if we can zoom in a little from here. Its lighting is not great, but so that's where Machu is inside. Now, I promised you one final thing before going, and that was to show you some of the door guards, the homeland team people. But before that, let's just take a look at this beautiful dragon. He's a royal dragon on the main door. You can see the guard line outside. I'm going to take it vertical for you in three. One, two, three. So he is a five-clawed dragon, which means he's a royal dragon. If I were to ask a painter to draw a dragon on my door, he'd probably draw a four-clawed dragon, not a five-clawed. And I'll take it horizontal again. The five claws represent the five elements of the earth. Not the earth, five elements for the in Chinese tradition. So air, fire, water, earth, so on. And this is the door general. So he is to keep the riffraff out. He is also to keep evil out. Let me give you a vertical of him. One, two, three. And I really love this painting. I just find the colors and the painting just so vibrant, even though he's quite a scary guy, right? But that's because he's meant to be. Can't do your job as a door guard by being a too nice a guy. You can even see that he's got a dragon above his right shoulder there. Ah, Rick, your father-in-law. I'm not going to say anything about that. All right, so we'll go back to horizontal in three. One, two, three. And so, Voyagers, we've come to the end of our walkabout at the Thian Hock Keng Temple and Mr. Ton's story. It's a bit loud here. Let me just walk back inside the temple. And Mr. Ton's story of coming to Singapore as a Chinese migrant, trying to find his future in a new land, and this temple with its fabulous structures inspiring and giving him some hope. So I would like to thank all of you for joining me. If you can, please do leave a tip. If you can't, no problem. If you enjoyed the tour, please write a review. If you have some great postcards, and hopefully you do, perhaps you can put them up on Facebook for me. So again, and of course, follow the channel if you like, because I'll be pushing out more tours from time to time. So Voyagers, again, this is Imran signing off from Singapore. Hopefully seeing you very, very soon again. All right, bye-bye.